The ceramic plates rattled against each other as I stacked them with trembling fingers, the clinking sound echoing through the nearly empty restaurant. My lower back ached from the double shift, a dull throb that had become as familiar as breathing. The scent of garlic and rosemary still clung to my uniform, mixed with the sharp tang of industrial cleaner I'd used to scrub the kitchen floors an hour ago. I should have left already. The clock above the bar read 11:47 p.m., and Marco, the head waiter, had clocked out 20 minutes earlier with a sympathetic pat on my shoulder. But I needed these extra minutes, needed to reorganize the wine glasses that didn't actually need reorganizing, needed to fold napkins that were already perfectly folded. Anything to avoid going home to my cramped studio apartment where the walls seemed to close in tighter each night. The restaurant, Stella Notte, sat tucked away on a quiet street in the old district, the kind of place that looked unassuming from the outside but whispered wealth once you stepped through its doors. Dark wood paneling, cream linen tablecloths, candles that cost more than my hourly wage. I'd been working here for 3 months, ever since I'd fled across the city with nothing but a duffel bag and desperation clawing at my throat. My fingers traced the rim of a wine glass, checking for spots that weren't there. The silence felt heavy, comfortable, safe. Then the door chimed. My entire body went rigid. We were closed. The sign was flipped. The doors should have been locked. My heart hammered against my ribs as I slowly lifted my gaze toward the entrance. And there he was. Ryan. The wine glass nearly slipped from my grasp. 6 months. 6 months since I'd changed my number, moved apartments, started over. 6 months since the last time he'd shown up drunk at my door, pounding until the neighbors threatened to call the police. 6 months since I'd seen those eyes that could shift from pleading to menacing in a heartbeat. He looked the same. Sandy hair disheveled, jaw shadowed with stubble. That leather jacket he thought made him look dangerous, but only made him look desperate. His gaze swept the restaurant, searching, hunting, searching for me. Panic seized my lungs. Without thinking, I dropped below the counter, my knees hitting the floor hard enough to send a jolt of pain shooting up my thighs. The wine glass tumbled from my fingers, and I caught it against my chest, holding my breath as if he might hear the air leaving my body. The polished wood of the cabinet pressed cold against my spine. I could hear his footsteps now, slow and deliberate, the soft squeak of his sneakers against the tile floor. "I know you're here, Mia." His voice carried across the empty space, that familiar blend of hurt and accusation that used to make me feel guilty, used to make me apologize for things that weren't my fault. "Your roommate told me where you work. We need to talk." I squeezed my eyes shut, willing myself to disappear. The edge of the counter dug into my shoulder blade. My pulse thundered in my ears so loudly I was certain he could hear it. "Come on, baby. Don't be like this." Closer now. He was walking between the tables, and I could track his movement by sound alone. "I've changed. I've really changed this time. I just want to talk." The same words. Always the same words. My hands shook as I clutched the wine glass tighter, afraid it might slip and shatter and give away my hiding spot. The restaurant's heating system hummed quietly, and somewhere in the back, a faucet dripped with metronomic precision. Each second stretched into an eternity. Then I heard something else, a door opening. Not the front entrance, but the private door that led to the upstairs offices, the ones I'd been told never to enter, the ones reserved for the owner I'd never met. Footsteps. Different from Ryan's. These were measured, confident, accompanied by the whisper of expensive fabric and the faint clink of what might have been cufflinks or a watch. "We're closed." The voice that spoke was silk, wrapped around steel, accented with something European I couldn't quite place. It wasn't loud, but it commanded the space in a way that made the air itself feel heavier. I risked the smallest glance upward, peering through the gap between the counter and the bar shelf. My breath caught. The man who had descended from the private offices was nothing like anyone I'd seen in this restaurant before. Tall, dressed in a charcoal suit that looked like it cost more than 6 months of my rent, with dark hair styled with careless precision. Even from my limited vantage point, I could see the sharp line of his jaw, the way he held himself with an authority that needed no announcement, but it was his eyes that made my stomach flip. Dark, almost black in the dim lighting, and utterly cold as they fixed on Ryan. "I'm looking for someone," Ryan said, and I could hear the uncertainty creeping into his voice. Whatever bravado he'd carried in here was already crumbling. "My girlfriend. She works here. The restaurant is closed." The man's tone hadn't changed, hadn't risen, but somehow it felt more dangerous. "You need to leave." Two other figures emerged from the shadows near the entrance. When had they arrived? Both built like walls, dressed in dark suits that matched their employers. They didn't speak. Didn't need to. Their presence alone was a threat. "Look, man, I just need 5 minutes," Ryan started. "Now." One word. That was all it took. I watched, still frozen behind the counter, as Ryan's shoulders hunched. He took a step backward, then another. "Fine. Whatever. Tell Mia I came by." The door chimed again as he left, and then there was only silence. My lungs burned. I'd been holding my breath without realizing it. Slowly, carefully, I started to rise from my hiding spot, my legs numb from crouching. "You can come out." I froze halfway up, my heart leaping into my throat. The voice was closer now, just on the other side of the counter. He knew. Of course he knew. Trembling, I stood fully, my fingers still gripping the wine glass like a lifeline. The man stood 3 feet away, and up close, he was even more imposing. Not just his height or the breadth of his shoulders beneath that perfectly tailored suit, but something in his presence itself. Power, the kind that didn't need to be spoken. His dark eyes swept over me, taking in my worn uniform, my disheveled hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, the wine glass I clutched against my chest. For a long moment, he said nothing, and I felt like a specimen under glass. "He won't come back." It wasn't a question or a reassurance. It was a statement of fact. My voice came out as a whisper. I cleared my throat, tried again. "Thank you. I'm sorry. I should have locked the door. I was just finishing." He raised a hand, silencing me. "What's your name?" "Mia. Mia Torres. I work here. I've been working here for 3 months." I was babbling now, words tumbling over themselves. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause any trouble. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again, Mia." He said my name like he was testing it, rolling it around in his mouth to see how it felt. Then his gaze shifted to the 2 men still standing by the door. "Luca, Marcus, wait outside." They left without a word, and suddenly the restaurant felt much smaller, much more intimate. "Do you make a habit of hiding behind counters?" There might have been amusement in his voice, but his expression remained unreadable, only from my ex-boyfriend. The words came out before I could stop them, and I immediately regretted the honesty. Heat flooded my cheeks. Something flickered across his face. Interest, perhaps, or calculation. "Does he make a habit of showing up at your workplace?" He found me. I thought I'd been careful. My fingers ached from gripping the wine glass. Gently, I set it down on the counter before I shattered it. "I changed my number, moved apartments. I don't know how he knew I was here." The man's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Your roommate," he said. "Former roommate. I didn't think she'd—" I cut myself off. Why was I telling him this? This stranger? This man who owned the restaurant I worked in? Because he had to be the owner, didn't he? No one else would come from those private offices with such authority. "Sit." He gestured to one of the bar stools. "I should finish closing." "Sit." I sat. He moved behind the bar with practiced ease, selecting a bottle of red wine from the rack with the kind of casual confidence that spoke of ownership. The cork came free with a soft pop, and he poured 2 glasses, the liquid catching the dim light like liquid rubies. One glass slid across the polished wood toward me. "I don't usually drink while working," I said, even as my fingers wrapped around the stem. "You're not working anymore. Your shift ended 47 minutes ago." He lifted his own glass, watching me over the rim. "Drink." It wasn't a request. The wine was velvet on my tongue, rich and complex, probably worth more than I made in a week. It warmed my chest, loosened the knot of tension that had been coiled tight since Ryan walked through that door. "How long has he been bothering you?" The question came quietly, almost conversational, but his eyes remained intense, focused entirely on me. 6 months since I left, but we were together for 2 years before that. The wine made me honest, or maybe it was the adrenaline crash, or maybe it was just the relief of having someone, anyone, ask. He wasn't always like this, or maybe he was, and I just didn't see it until it was too late. Like what? Controlling. Jealous. He needed to know where I was every minute, who I was with, what I was doing. I took another sip, the words flowing easier now. He'd show up unannounced, check my phone, accuse me of things I never did. When I finally left, he wouldn't accept it. Kept saying we could work it out, that he'd change. The man's expression remained neutral, but something dark flickered behind his eyes. And tonight? Tonight was the first time in 6 months that he's found me. The weight of that realization settled over me like a cold blanket. I thought I was safe here. You are. 2 words, spoken with such certainty that I almost believed them. He set down his wine glass, and I noticed his hands for the first time. Strong, with long fingers, a silver ring on his right hand engraved with symbols I couldn't make out. There was something about the way he moved, economical and precise, that reminded me of a predator. "What's your name?" I asked, surprising myself with the boldness. A slight smile touched his lips, the first real expression I'd seen from him. Dante. Dante Salvatore. The name should have meant something to me, I realized later. The way he said it, like it carried weight. But in that moment, exhausted and rattled and still buzzing with adrenaline, I just nodded. "Thank you for getting rid of him, Mr. Salvatore." "Dante," he corrected. And I didn't do it for gratitude. Before I could ask what he meant, he reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a business card, heavy cardstock, embossed lettering. He slid it across the bar toward me. "If he comes back, you call this number, immediately." I picked up the card, studied it. Just a phone number, no name, no business title. "Why would you?" "Because you work for me now, and what's mine is protected." His eyes held mine, and there was something in them that made my breath catch. Not kindness exactly, something more possessive. "Do you understand?" I should have been unsettled by the phrasing, by the intensity of his gaze, by the way he spoke about protection like it was a claim of ownership, but instead, I felt something else entirely. Safe. For the first time in 6 months, I felt safe. "I understand," I whispered. Dante stood, buttoning his suit jacket with smooth efficiency. "Finish your wine. Luca will drive you home. I can take the bus." "No." The word was final. "Not tonight. Not anymore." He was already walking toward the door, his footsteps echoing in the quiet restaurant. I watched him go. This stranger who had appeared like something out of a dark fairy tale, and wondered what I'd just agreed to. The door opened, and he paused, looking back at me one last time. "Mia." My name on his lips sent a shiver down my spine. "Don't hide anymore. You won't need to." Then he was gone, leaving me alone with half a glass of wine that cost more than my weekly grocery budget, and a business card that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Outside, I could see the sleek black car waiting, Luca standing beside it like a sentinel. I downed the rest of my wine, tucked the card into my pocket, and tried to ignore the way my hands still trembled. Not from fear this time, from something far more dangerous. The leather seat of the black Mercedes was butter soft beneath my legs, so different from the cracked vinyl of the bus seats I'd grown accustomed to. Luca drove in silence, his eyes occasionally flicking to the rear-view mirror, watching not me but the road behind us. Checking. Always checking. I pressed my forehead against the cool window, watching the city lights blur past. The streets were nearly empty at this hour, just the occasional taxi or delivery truck. My reflection stared back at me, pale and wide-eyed, like I didn't quite recognize myself. What had just happened? My fingers found the business card in my pocket, tracing the embossed numbers. Dante Salvatore. The name rolled around in my mind, and I realized with a start that I'd never actually seen the owner of Stella Notte before tonight. Marco had mentioned him once or twice, always in hushed tones, always with a certain reverence that felt almost like fear. "He doesn't come around often," Marco had said during my first week. "But when he does, everything needs to be perfect. Understood?" I'd understood that I needed this job, needed the cash payments that didn't ask questions, Needed the late shifts that kept me too busy to think about Ryan's hands around my throat, his voice in my ear telling me I was worthless, that no one else would ever want me. The car pulled up outside my building, a crumbling 5-story walk-up in a neighborhood that was trying hard to gentrify, but hadn't quite made it yet. Luca got out first, scanned the street with the same methodical attention he'd given the road, then opened my door. "Thank you," I murmured. Stepping out onto the cracked sidewalk, he nodded once, didn't speak. Waited until I'd climbed the front steps and unlocked the building's entrance before getting back into the car. I watched through the grimy glass as the Mercedes pulled away, its taillights disappearing around the corner. The silence in the hallway felt oppressive after the strange intimacy of the restaurant. I climbed the stairs slowly, my legs heavy with exhaustion, and tried not to think about Dante's eyes, the way they'd swept over me like he could read every secret I'd ever kept. What's mine is protected, I shivered despite the building's stale heat. My studio apartment was exactly as I'd left it, cramped, dim, with water stains on the ceiling and a radiator that clanked like it was dying. But it was mine. My bed, my tiny kitchenette, my bathroom with a door that didn't quite close all the way. No one to tell me I'd folded the towels wrong, or question why I'd taken an extra 5 minutes at the grocery store, or go through my phone while I slept. I locked the door, checked it twice, then wedged a chair under the handle like I did every night. Sleep didn't come easily. I lay in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the city. Sirens in the distance. Someone arguing in Spanish 3 floors up. The constant hum of traffic that never quite died. My mind kept replaying the evening in fragments. Ryan's voice calling my name. The cold floor against my knees, Dante's hand raising, silencing me with just a gesture. The way he'd said my name. Mia. Like it meant something. I pulled the blanket up to my chin and closed my eyes, but all I could see was the intensity of his gaze, dark and consuming, and the strange flip in my stomach that had nothing to do with fear. Morning came too soon, gray light filtering through the thin curtains. My phone alarm shrieked at 6:30 a.m., and I silenced it with a groan. My back still ached from yesterday's double shift, and my knees were bruised from hitting the floor behind the counter. The restaurant didn't open for lunch service until 11, but I was scheduled to come in early to help prep. I showered in lukewarm water, the building's hot water was temperamental at best, and dressed in clean jeans and a plain black t-shirt. My reflection in the spotted mirror looked tired. Shadows under my eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. The business card sat on my nightstand where I'd left it, innocuous, and somehow threatening at the same time. I grabbed my bag, tucked the card into my wallet, and headed out. The morning air was crisp, autumn finally asserting itself after weeks of lingering summer heat. I stopped at the corner bodega for coffee, watery and bitter but cheap, and a bagel I ate while walking. The streets were crowded now with the morning rush, people in suits and uniforms all moving with purpose, and I let myself blend into the anonymity of the crowd. No one looked at me. No one saw me. Just the way I liked it. Stella Notte looked different in daylight. Less mysterious, more ordinary. The dark wood exterior that seemed so elegant at night just looked worn. The gold lettering on the window slightly faded. I used my key to let myself in through the back entrance, stepping into the familiar smell of coffee and bread from the kitchen. "Mia, you're here early." Sophia, one of the line cooks, looked up from where she was chopping vegetables. She was in her 50s, with kind eyes and hands that never stopped moving. "Marco said there was some trouble last night?" Word traveled fast. "Just my ex showed up," I said, hanging my bag in the small employee area. "It's handled." "That boy who used to call here looking for you?" Sophia's knife paused mid-chop. "The one Marco told to stop calling? I'd forgotten about that. The first week I'd worked here, Ryan had somehow gotten the restaurant's number. Had called 6 times in one shift until Marco finally answered and told him, in creative Italian, exactly where he could go. "Yeah, that one." Sophia made a disapproving sound in her throat. "Men like that don't give up easy, mija. You be careful." "I will." I tied my apron on, eager to change the subject. "What do you need me to do?" The morning passed in the comfortable rhythm of kitchen work. I prepped salads, folded napkins, set tables, lost myself in the mindless tasks that didn't require thinking. The lunch service was moderately busy. Businessmen in expensive suits, elegant women who lunch, the kind of clientele that left decent tips and didn't make a fuss. I was clearing a table near the window when the front door opened and two men in dark suits walked in. Not Luca and Marcus from last night, but cut from the same cloth. They scanned the restaurant with professional efficiency. Then one of them spoke quietly into his phone. A moment later, Dante walked in. My hands froze, a dirty plate suspended halfway to my tray. He wore a different suit today, navy this time, with a crisp white shirt open at the collar. His dark hair caught the afternoon light streaming through the windows, and even from across the room, I could feel the weight of his presence. He saw me immediately, his gaze finding mine across the crowded restaurant like a magnet. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition, assessment, something else I couldn't name. Then he was moving toward the back, toward the private offices upstairs. The two men flanking him like shadows. Close your mouth. You'll catch flies. Marco appeared at my elbow, amused. And stopped staring. Mr. Salvatore doesn't like being stared at. I snapped my attention back to the table, heat flooding my cheeks. I wasn't... Sure you weren't. Marco took the tray from my hands. He asked about you this morning, you know. Wanted to know how long you'd been working here, where you came from, if you'd had any trouble. My heart skipped. What did you tell him? The truth. That you're a good worker, keep to yourself, never late, never complain. Marco's expression grew serious. That ex of yours who showed up last night, he won't be a problem anymore. How do you know? Marco just looked at me, and there was something in his eyes that made my stomach tighten. Because Mr. Salvatore doesn't tolerate problems, especially not ones that involve his employees. Before I could ask what that meant, Marco was heading back to the kitchen, leaving me standing there with more questions than answers. The afternoon stretched on. I kept expecting to see Dante emerge from upstairs, but he never did. Other men came and went through that private door. Some in suits, some in more casual attire, all of them carrying themselves with the same watchful tension. They never looked at the regular customers, never acknowledged the waitstaff, just moved through the restaurant like they existed in a different dimension. By 4 o'clock, the lunch crowd had thinned to nothing. I was wiping down tables when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Dante descended alone this time. No guards, no entourage. He'd removed his suit jacket, his shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that were surprisingly muscular. There was something almost casual about him like this, though the aura of power never quite left. He walked directly to where I stood, and I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "How was your night?" he asked, as if we were old friends catching up. Quiet. Uneventful. I folded the cloth in my hands, needing something to do with them. "Thank you again for last night, and for the ride home. Luca said your building has inadequate security." I blinked at the non sequitur. It's fine. The lock works. The front door lock is broken. Anyone can walk in off the street." His tone was matter of fact, no judgment, just observation. "The hallway lighting is poor, no camera system. Your apartment is on the 3rd floor with a fire escape directly outside your window." A chill ran down my spine. "How do you—" "I make it my business to know these things." He pulled out his phone, scrolled through something I couldn't see. "There's a building 2 blocks from here. Renovated last year. Security system, doorman, cameras in every hallway. A unit became available this morning." I stared at him. "I can't afford—" "You're not paying for it." He looked up from his phone, his dark eyes pinning me in place. "Consider it a benefit of employment, Mr. Salvatore. Dante." Dante. His name felt strange on my tongue, too intimate. "I appreciate the offer, but I can't accept something like that. It's too much." "It's already done. You move in this weekend." He slid his phone back into his pocket. "Luca will help with your things." The presumption should have angered me, should have triggered every alarm bell that Ryan had installed in my psyche about men who made decisions for me, men who controlled and manipulated and took away my choices. But Dante wasn't Ryan. There was no pleading in his voice, no emotional manipulation. Just a simple statement of fact, delivered with the absolute certainty of someone who was used to being obeyed. "Why?" The word came out barely above a whisper. "Why would you do this for me?" He stepped closer, and I caught his scent. Expensive cologne layered over something darker, tobacco maybe, or whiskey. The restaurant suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. Because you're mine to protect now. His hand lifted, and I thought he might touch my face, but instead he tucked a strand of hair that had escaped my ponytail behind my ear. The gesture was almost tender, at odds with the possession in his words. And I protect what's mine. I'm not. I started, but the words died in my throat as his fingers lingered near my cheek. You are. Simple. Final. Whether you realize it yet or not. Then he was stepping back, that careful distance returning. The apartment information is at the bar. Luca will pick you up Saturday morning at 9. Pack light. Anything you don't want, leave it. He turned to go, and I found my voice again. Dante. He paused, glanced back. What do you want from me? The question hung between us, heavy with implications I didn't fully understand. A slow smile curved his lips, transforming his face from severe to devastating. Right now. Just for you to be safe. And later? Later, he said softly. We'll see. Then he was gone, disappearing back up the stairs, leaving me standing in the empty restaurant with my heart racing and the ghost of his touch still tingling against my skin. I walked to the bar on unsteady legs. There, next to the register, sat a manila envelope with my name written in bold, masculine handwriting. Inside was a key, an address, and a lease agreement already signed. Just waiting for my name. Saturday morning arrived wrapped in fog, the kind that made the city look like a dream sequence. I'd spent the past 2 days in a strange liminal space, going through the motions at work, while my mind spiraled around the impossibility of what was happening. A new apartment. Just like that. As if lives could be rearranged with the same ease as furniture. I'd packed my things in the darkness of Friday night. 1 duffel bag of clothes, a box of books, my laptop, a few photographs I couldn't bear to leave behind. Everything else. The mismatched dishes and threadbare towels and furniture I'd bought secondhand. I left. Dante had said to pack light, and something told me that arguing with him would be futile. The knock came at exactly 9 a.m. Not Luca this time, but Marcus, the taller of Dante's 2 shadows from that first night. He took my bag without a word, his expression unchanging as he surveyed my tiny studio with the kind of assessment I was beginning to recognize, cataloging exits, threats, vulnerabilities. That's everything? He asked, his voice surprisingly soft for a man his size. That's everything. The Mercedes was parked illegally at the curb, hazard lights blinking. Marcus held the door open and I slid into the back seat, breathing in the scent of leather and something expensive, wood polish maybe, or high-end air freshener. The drive took less than 10 minutes. The new building was exactly as Dante had described. Renovated brick with clean lines, a doorman in a burgundy uniform who nodded at Marcus like they were old acquaintances, glass doors that required a keycard to open. The lobby was all marble and soft lighting, with fresh flowers on a central table and elevator doors that gleamed like mirrors. I caught my reflection as we waited. Jeans and a worn sweater, my hair in its perpetual ponytail, looking entirely out of place amid all this polished elegance. 3rd floor. Marcus said, pressing the button. The elevator rose smoothly, silently. No grinding gears, no lurching stops. When the doors opened, we stepped into a hallway that smelled like paint and new carpet. Marcus led me to apartment 3C, producing a key identical to the one in my envelope. The door swung open, and I forgot how to breathe. It wasn't large, perhaps twice the size of my studio, but it was beautiful. Hardwood floors gleamed in the morning light streaming through windows that actually had curtains. A small kitchen with granite countertops and appliances that looked like they'd never been used. A living area with a couch, a coffee table, a flat-screen TV mounted on the wall. A bedroom with a real bed, already made with crisp white linens. Mr. Salvatore had it furnished yesterday, Marcus said, setting my duffel bag on the couch. If there's anything you need, make a list. I'll come back this afternoon. I wandered into the kitchen, running my fingers over the smooth countertop. Real granite, cold and solid beneath my touch. The refrigerator hummed quietly, and when I opened it, I found it already stocked. Milk, eggs, fresh vegetables, fruit. a bottle of the same wine Dante had poured for me that first night. "I don't understand," I whispered, more to myself than to Marcus, but he heard. "Mr. Salvatore takes care of his people." "I'm just a waitress." Something flickered across Marcus's face. Not quite amusement, but close. "You're more than that now." Before I could ask what he meant, he was heading for the door. "Lock up behind me. The building's secure, but lock up anyway. Mr. Salvatore will be by later to check on you." Then I was alone in this beautiful space that didn't feel real, didn't feel like mine. I locked the door, checked it twice, then walked through the apartment again, touching everything like I needed to confirm its existence. The bathroom had a shower with water pressure that actually worked, fluffy towels in shades of cream and gray, toiletries still in their packaging. The bedroom closet was empty, waiting for my sparse wardrobe that would barely fill a corner of it. The windows had real locks, and when I looked out, I could see the street below, busy with weekend foot traffic. I unpacked my duffel bag in a daze, hanging my few shirts and jeans in the massive closet where they looked lost and inadequate. My books went on the built-in shelf in the living room. The photographs. My mother before she got sick, my younger sister at her high school graduation, me at 21 before I met Ryan, and my eyes still held light. I placed on the nightstand. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to process what was happening. Dante Salvatore had swept into my life 3 days ago, and already he'd rearranged everything. New apartment, security, protection. All of it offered with the kind of casual certainty that spoke of immense power and resources. "What's mine is protected," I shivered, pulling my knees to my chest. I should have been terrified, should have recognized the warning signs. A man who moved too fast, who made decisions without consulting me, who spoke about ownership like it was a gift, but this didn't feel like Ryan. Ryan had isolated me slowly, chipping away at my independence with guilt and accusations until I was too exhausted to fight back. Ryan had made me smaller. Dante was offering me space. Safety, a door that locked and windows that didn't rattle in the wind, and a shower that actually got hot. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. "Are you settled?" I stared at the message, my heart doing that strange stutter it seemed to do whenever Dante was involved. There was no signature, but I knew who it was. "Yes." "Thank you." The response came immediately. "Good. Stay there. I'm sending lunch. You don't have to." "I know." I set the phone down, a smile tugging at my lips despite everything. Bossy. He was absolutely bossy, used to giving orders and having them followed without question, but there was something about the way he did it. No anger, no manipulation, just simple expectation that didn't trigger the panic Ryan had instilled in me. Lunch arrived an hour later, delivered by a young man in a Stella Knott uniform I didn't recognize. He carried 3 bags of food, enough to feed 4 people, and refused my offer of a tip. "Mr. Salvatore's orders, miss. Everything's taken care of." I spread the containers across my new coffee table. Pasta carbonara, Caesar salad, fresh bread, tiramisu, another bottle of wine. The scent filled the apartment, rich and indulgent, and my stomach reminded me I'd barely eaten in 2 days. I was halfway through the pasta when my phone rang. Dante's number. "Hello?" I answered, suddenly nervous. "How's the apartment?" His voice was warm, less formal than it had been at the restaurant. It's amazing. Too much." "You really didn't have to. Do you like it?" he interrupted. "I love it," I admitted. "But Dante, I can't possibly accept." "You already did. You're sitting in it right now, eating lunch I sent, in a home where you're safe." A pause. "Where your ex-boyfriend can't find you." The mention of Ryan sent ice through my veins. "How did you—" "I told you. I make it my business to know things." His tone shifted, became harder. "Ryan Castellano, 28 years old, works at an auto shop in Queens. Has a history of domestic complaints, though you never filed any yourself. His current address is a basement apartment he shares with 2 roommates." My hand trembled around the phone. "You investigated him?" "I had him investigated. There's a difference." The hardness in his voice softened slightly. "He won't bother you again, Mia. I've made certain of it." "What does that mean?" Silence on the other end, long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then, it means he understands that you're under my protection now, and what that protection entails. A chill ran down my spine, but it wasn't entirely from fear. Did you threaten him? I don't threaten, Cara. I inform. The Italian endearment rolled off his tongue like honey. He's been informed that any attempt to contact you, to find you, to even think about you too loudly, will have consequences he won't enjoy. I should have been horrified, should have protested this interference in my life, this assumption of control. Instead, I felt a weight I'd been carrying for 6 months start to lift from my shoulders. Thank you, I whispered. You don't need to thank me for doing what should be done. A sound in the background, voices I couldn't make out. I have to go. There's a meeting I can't postpone, but Mia? Yes. Don't leave the apartment today. Stay inside, rest, enjoy your new home. Tomorrow, Luca will take you to the restaurant for your shift. I can take the bus. No. Final. Absolute. Not anymore. Luca will drive you to and from work. Every shift. This isn't negotiable. The old Mia, the one who'd spent 2 years tiptoeing around Ryan's moods, would have argued. Would have insisted on her independence, on her right to make her own decisions. But this new Mia, the one sitting in a beautiful apartment she'd never be able to afford on her own, the one who hadn't felt this safe in years, just nodded even though he couldn't see her. Okay. Good girl. The praise sent warmth flooding through me. I'll see you soon. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there for a long moment, the phone still pressed to my ear, trying to understand what was happening to me. This man, this stranger who'd appeared in my life less than a week ago, was rearranging everything, and I was letting him. No. More than letting him. I was starting to want it. The rest of the day passed in a strange suspension of reality. I explored every inch of the apartment, took a long shower in water that stayed hot for 20 minutes straight, curled up on the couch with one of my books, and actually relaxed for the first time in months. As evening fell, painting the apartment in shades of amber and gold, I found myself at the window, looking down at the street below. People walked past in couples and groups, laughing, talking, living their lives. I used to be one of them, before Ryan. Used to have friends, hobbies, dreams that extended beyond just surviving each day. Maybe I could be that person again. My phone buzzed with another message from Dante. Look out your window. I frowned, scanning the street. A black Mercedes was parked across from my building, and leaning against it, looking up at my window, was Dante. Even from 3 floors up, I could feel the intensity of his gaze. My heart hammered as I grabbed my keys and headed for the elevator. I shouldn't have been so eager, shouldn't have practically run through the lobby, but my feet seemed to have their own agenda. The evening air was cool against my flushed skin as I pushed through the building's front door. Dante straightened from the car, his hands in the pockets of dark slacks, his white shirt open at the collar and somehow making him look more dangerous, not less. You didn't have to come down, he said as I approached, but there was satisfaction in his eyes. You were standing on the street looking at my window. What was I supposed to do? That slow smile again, the one that transformed his entire face. Walk with me. It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. He fell into step beside me, and I noticed Marcus trailing behind at a discreet distance. Ever watchful, we walked in silence for a block. Then, too, the neighborhood was alive with Saturday night energy. Restaurants opening for dinner service, bars filling with the early crowd, street musicians setting up on corners. Dante's presence beside me felt solid, grounding, like an anchor in a storm I hadn't realized I was still weathering. Are you going to tell me what you really do? I asked finally, the question that had been burning in my mind for days. He glanced at me, one eyebrow raised. What do you think I do? I think you own more than just a restaurant. I think those men who come and go through the private office aren't there to discuss menu options. I took a breath. I think you're someone important, someone dangerous. Does that frighten you? I considered the question honestly. It should. But no. We'd reached a small park, just a pocket of green space with a few benches and a fountain that wasn't running. Dante gestured to a bench, and I sat. He remained standing, looking down at me with an expression I couldn't read. My family has been in this city for 4 generations, he said finally. We have interests, businesses, connections. Some legitimate, some less so. You're in the Mafia. I said it plainly, without judgment. His lips quirked. That's a word the movies love. The reality is more complicated. But yes. He sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. Does that change things? I don't know, I admitted. Should it? Most people would run. I've been running for 6 months. I'm tired of it. I turned to face him fully. Why me, Dante? You could have anyone. Why are you doing all this for me? His hand lifted, cupping my jaw with surprising gentleness. His thumb traced my cheekbone, and I shivered at the contact. Because when I saw you hiding behind that counter, terrified and alone, something in me recognized something in you. His dark eyes held mine, intense and consuming. You're stronger than you know, Mia. You've survived things that would break most people. And you did it alone, with no one to protect you. And now I have you. Now you have me. His thumb moved to my lower lip, and my breath caught, if you want me. I should have said no, should have recognized this for what it was. A powerful man claiming possession of something he wanted, should have remembered every warning sign, every red flag, every lesson Ryan had taught me about men who wanted to control. But Dante wasn't offering control. He was offering protection, safety, a chance to stop running. I want you, I whispered. His eyes darkened, and for a moment I thought he might kiss me. Instead, he stood, pulling me up with him, his hand still cradling my face. Then you have me too, cara mia. All of me, for better or worse. The promise in his words felt like a vow, binding and permanent. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I wasn't afraid of what came next. The weeks that followed blurred together like watercolors in rain, each day bleeding into the next in shades of possibility I'd forgotten existed. My life developed a new rhythm, one conducted by Dante's careful orchestration, though he'd never call it that. Luca arrived every morning at 8:30, the Mercedes idling at the curb while I finished my coffee in the apartment that still didn't quite feel real. He'd drive me to Stella Notti, wait while I worked my shift, then drive me home. At first, I'd tried to make conversation, to break through his professional silence, but eventually, I learned to appreciate the quiet. It felt safe, protected. Dante came by the restaurant almost daily now, though never predictably. Sometimes at lunch, appearing in an impeccable suit with papers that needed signing, meetings that required his attention. Other times late at night, after the last customer had left, when he'd pour us both wine and ask about my day like my opinions on difficult customers, and burnt risotto actually mattered to him. We never spoke about what was growing between us. It existed in the spaces, in the way his hand would brush my lower back as he passed, in how his eyes tracked my movement across the dining room, in the text messages that came at odd hours asking if I'd eaten, if I was sleeping, if I needed anything. Do you need anything? The question should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like someone finally seeing me. But there were things I noticed, patterns that emerged like constellations once you knew where to look. The men who came and went through that private door upstairs moved with purpose, and often left looking grim. Sometimes I'd catch fragments of conversation in Italian, sharp, heated words that made the air feel dangerous. Dante would emerge from these meetings with tension in his shoulders, a hardness in his jaw that took hours to soften. Marco had worked at Stella Notte for 15 years and knew when to see things and when to look away. One evening, as we closed together, he'd pulled me aside. "You're good for him," he'd said quietly, folding napkins with practiced efficiency. "Mr. Salvatore, I've never seen him like this." "Like what?" "Distracted." Marco had smiled, but there was something serious beneath it. In our world, distraction can be dangerous. But sometimes, it's worth the risk. Our world. As if I'd crossed some invisible threshold without realizing it. It was a Thursday night, 3 weeks after I'd moved into the apartment, when everything shifted. The restaurant was hosting a private party. 20 men in expensive suits, speaking in low voices over plates of osso buco and bottles of wine that didn't appear on our regular menu. Dante had asked me to work the event personally, had looked at me with those dark eyes and said, "I need you there." Not want. Need. So I'd worn my best black dress, the one I saved for special occasions, and pulled my hair back in a sleek ponytail that made me look more sophisticated than I felt. The guests barely acknowledged me as I moved between tables, refilling glasses, clearing plates. To them, I was invisible, just another piece of furniture in the carefully constructed scene. But Dante saw me. His eyes found mine across the room repeatedly, tracking my movements with an intensity that made my skin flush. He sat at the head of the table, commanding attention without effort, and when he spoke, everyone listened. I was clearing dessert plates when I felt it. The shift in atmosphere, subtle as a change in air pressure before a storm. One of the men, younger than the others, with slicked back hair and a cruel mouth, had been drinking heavily. His hand shot out as I passed, fingers wrapping around my wrist. "What's your name, beautiful?" I froze. His grip was tight enough to hurt, his smile predatory. The conversation at the table died. "Let go, please," I said quietly, trying to pull away. His grip tightened. "I asked you a question. Then Dante was there. I hadn't seen him move, but suddenly he was standing beside us, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. His hand closed over the man's wrist, not violently, but with enough pressure that the younger man's face went pale. "Remove your hand." Dante's voice was soft, almost conversational. "Now." The man released me immediately, stumbling back in his chair. "I didn't know, you weren't thinking." Dante's eyes never left the man's face. "Luca Marcus, please escort our guest outside. He needs some air." It wasn't a suggestion. The 2 guards materialized from the shadows, flanking the younger man who was now stammering apologies. They guided him toward the exit with the kind of gentle firmness that promised violence if he resisted. Dante turned to me, his expression softening fractionally. "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm fine." My wrist throbbed where the man had grabbed it, but I could feel every eye in the room on us. "It's okay, really. It's not okay." His hand cupped my elbow, steadying me even though I wasn't swaying. "Take a break. Go upstairs, I'll handle this." I wanted to argue, to insist I could continue working, but something in his tone told me this wasn't the time. I nodded and headed for the private stairs, acutely aware of the whispers that followed my exit. The upstairs office was dimly lit, furnished with dark leather and mahogany that spoke of old money and older power. I'd never been up here before. It was Dante's domain, forbidden territory. But he'd sent me here, so I perched on the edge of the leather couch and waited. The murmur of voices from below was muffled but constant. I couldn't make out words, but I could hear Dante's voice rising occasionally, firm and unyielding. Whatever he was saying, it was final. 20 minutes passed before his footsteps sounded on the stairs. He entered the office, loosening his tie with sharp, frustrated movements, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked genuinely angry. "Let me see your wrist." I held it out, and he took my hand with surprising gentleness, his fingers probing the reddened skin where bruises would bloom by morning. His jaw tightened. I should have killed him. The words were spoken so casually, so matter-of-factly, that it took a moment for them to register. When they did, my breath caught. "Dante." He touched what's mine. His thumb traced the marks on my wrist, feather-light. "He put his hands on you in my restaurant, in front of my people, and thought there wouldn't be consequences. You can't kill someone for grabbing my wrist." His eyes lifted to mine, and what I saw there made my pulse race. "I can do whatever I want, Kara." "That's what power means." "Then why didn't you?" "Because you're here, and you wouldn't understand." He released my hand, turning away to pour himself a drink from the bar cart. Whiskey, neat. He downed it in one swallow. "You're not ready for that part of my world yet." "What part?" "The part where you threaten people? Control everything around you?" I stood, surprising myself with my boldness. "I'm not blind, Dante. I know what you are. What you do." "Do you?" He turned back to face me, his expression unreadable. "Do you really understand what it means that I've claimed you? That every person in this city who matters knows you're under my protection? Then explain it to me." He crossed the distance between us in 3 strides, backing me against the wall beside the bookshelf. His hands braced on either side of my head, caging me in. and I could smell the whiskey on his breath, feel the heat radiating from his body. "It means," he said, his voice low and dangerous, "that you're mine. Not just protected, mine. It means no one touches you, speaks to you, even looks at you without my permission. It means I own every moment of your safety, every breath you take without fear." That's insane. That's reality. His hand cupped my jaw, tilting my face up to his. "I've tried to be patient, to let you adjust, to give you space to understand what's happening between us. But tonight, when I saw his hand on you, his grip tightened fractionally. I wanted to burn the world down." My heart hammered against my ribs. I should have been terrified, should have recognized this possessiveness for the danger it represented, but all I felt was heat, a responding fire that had been building since that first night when he'd poured me wine and told me I was his to protect. "I'm not a possession," I whispered. "No. You're so much more than that." His thumb traced my lower lip, the same gesture from that night in the park. "You're the first thing I think about when I wake up, and the last thing I see before I sleep. You're the reason I come to this restaurant every day when I have a dozen other businesses that need my attention. You're the complication I never wanted, and now can't imagine living without. Dante, I'm obsessed with you, Mia." The confession came raw and honest. Completely, irrationally obsessed. "And I know that should frighten you, that you should run from a man like me. But I'm not letting you go. Not now. Not ever." His mouth crashed against mine before I could respond, claiming, possessing, devouring. The kiss was nothing gentle, nothing patient. It was fire and fury and 3 weeks of restrained desire finally unleashed. My hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer even as my mind screamed that this was dangerous. This was wrong. This was exactly what I'd sworn to avoid. But Dante wasn't Ryan. This wasn't manipulation wrapped in false sweetness. This was raw power, meeting raw need, and I was drowning in it. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. His forehead rested against mine, his hands still framing my face like I was something precious and breakable. "Tell me to stop," he murmured. "Tell me you don't want this, and I'll find a way to let you go." It was the lie of a desperate man, and we both knew it. But it was also a choice, freely offered in a way Ryan had never given me. "I don't want you to stop." The words came from somewhere deep inside me, the part that had been locked away for so long I'd forgotten it existed. "I want you. All of you. Even the parts that scare me." Something fierce and triumphant flashed in his eyes. "Then you have me, cara mia. God help us both." He kissed me again, slower this time, thorough and claiming, and I let myself fall into it, into him. Into this dangerous, impossible thing that felt more right than anything in my life ever had. When we finally broke apart, his phone was buzzing insistently. He checked it with a grimace, then looked at me with genuine regret. "I have to deal with something. It can't wait. The man from downstairs, among other things." He pressed one more kiss to my forehead. "Luca will take you home. Stay there. Lock the door. I'll come by later if I can. And if you can't," his smile was dark, "then I'll see you tomorrow, and we'll finish this conversation properly." He left me there in his office, my lips still tingling from his kiss, my world irrevocably altered. Through the window, I watched him emerge onto the street below, flanked by Marcus and 2 other guards I didn't recognize. They climbed into a black SUV, and within seconds, they were gone. I touched my fingers to my lips, still feeling the ghost of his mouth on mine. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. The city continued its eternal symphony of chaos and beauty, and I stood in Dante Salvatore's office, knowing I'd just crossed a line there was no uncrossing. I'd given myself to a dangerous man, and the terrifying part was how much I wanted to do it again. The following days felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting for the inevitable fall. Dante hadn't come by that night as promised, or the next. Luca offered no explanations during our silent drives, and the restaurant felt hollow without Dante's presence filling its corners. I told myself it didn't matter, that one kiss didn't change anything, that I could go back to my carefully constructed life of invisibility and safety. I told myself a lot of lies. On the third day, Marcus appeared at my apartment door at 7 in the morning. I answered in my pajamas, heart racing, immediately fearing the worst. Mr. Salvatore needs you to pack a bag, he said without preamble. Enough for a weekend. We're leaving in an hour. Leaving? Where? He'll explain everything. Marcus's expression softened fractionally. He's fine, miss. Just busy. But he wants you with him now. An hour later, I was in the back of the Mercedes with a hastily packed overnight bag, watching the city recede behind us. We drove north, leaving behind the cramped streets and towering buildings for open highway, and eventually, winding roads that cut through forests painted in autumn colors. The house, though calling it a house felt inadequate, sat on a hill overlooking a private lake. Stone and glass and modern lines that somehow felt warm rather than cold. Marcus pulled up to the front entrance where Dante stood waiting, hands in his pockets, looking more relaxed than I'd ever seen him in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater. He opened my door himself, offering his hand to help me out. Forgive the short notice. You disappeared for 3 days, and now you've kidnapped me to a lake house? I tried to sound annoyed, but the relief flooding through me at seeing him safe betrayed my tone. Not kidnapped. Invited. His thumb stroked across my knuckles. I had business to handle, things that required my full attention. But it's resolved now, and I wanted you here. Away from the city. Just us. Just us and how many guards? He smiled. Marcus and Luca are in the guest house, but the main house, just us. The interior was all warm wood and stone fireplaces, floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the lake like living paintings. Dante gave me a brief tour, the open kitchen, the living room with its massive fireplace, the library lined with books in multiple languages, the master bedroom with its view of the water. There are 2 other bedrooms if you'd prefer your own space, he said, watching me carefully. No expectations, Mia. I just wanted you here. I set my bag down on the bench at the foot of the massive bed. Why? Because I've spent 3 days handling threats to my business, dealing with people who think they can challenge my authority, making decisions that required me to be someone I don't want to be around you. He crossed to where I stood, cupping my face in both hands. And all I could think about was getting back to you, seeing you, touching you. That's the obsession talking, I whispered, but I leaned into his touch, probably. His smile was self-deprecating. Does it bother you? I thought about Ryan's obsession, how it had felt like chains and suffocation. How different this was. Dante's intensity that somehow created space rather than closing it in. No, I admitted, it should, but it doesn't. He kissed me then, soft and reverent, like I was something precious he'd been denied for too long. When he pulled back, his eyes held a vulnerability I'd never seen before. Stay with me this weekend. No restaurant, no city, no obligations. Just us learning each other. Okay. We fell into an easy rhythm over the next 2 days. Dante cooked, surprisingly well, and we ate meals on the deck overlooking the lake. We talked about everything and nothing. My childhood in a small town I'd left at 18. His family's history in the city spanning generations. Books we'd read, places we wanted to see. He never spoke directly about his business. But pieces emerged in fragments. A cousin who'd betrayed him, rivals testing boundaries, the constant weight of leadership and legacy. My father built an empire, he said one evening as we sat by the fire, my head on his shoulder, his arm around me. And when he died, everyone expected me to crumble. I was 23, too young, too educated, too modern. They thought I'd be easy to manipulate or eliminate. But you weren't. No. I learned quickly that mercy is often mistaken for weakness, that in my world, you protect what's yours with absolute force, or you lose everything. His fingers traced patterns on my arm. I've done things, Mia, things I can't undo, things that would horrify you if you knew the details. Are you trying to scare me away? I'm trying to be honest. He shifted to look at me directly, because what I feel for you, it's not going away. It's only getting stronger, and you deserve to know what you're getting into. I studied his face, the sharp angles softened by firelight, the eyes that could be so cold and calculating, but looked at me with such raw need. I spent 2 years with a man who made me feel small, I said slowly. who told me I was lucky he loved me because no one else would, who controlled me with guilt and anger and the constant threat that he might snap. I was terrified every day, but I stayed because I'd forgotten I had any other choice. Dante's jaw tightened, but he let me continue. You're powerful and dangerous and probably terrifying to your enemies, but you've never made me feel small. You've given me safety and space and choices. You ask instead of demand. You protect instead of control. I placed my hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat accelerate under my palm. So yes, I know what you are, and I'm choosing you anyway. He captured my hand, pressed it harder against his heart. I'll burn down the world before I let anyone hurt you again. I know. I'll kill anyone who even thinks about taking you from me. I know that too. And I'll never let you go. Never, Mia. You're mine now, in every way that matters. Then I guess you're stuck with me. I smiled, and something in his expression cracked open, raw and vulnerable. Come here, he murmured, pulling me onto his lap so I straddled him. His hands framed my face, thumbs stroking my cheekbones. Say it. Say you're mine. I'm yours. Again. I'm yours, Dante. Completely. He kissed me with a hunger that stole my breath, hands sliding into my hair, pulling me closer until there was no space between us. The fire crackled beside us as we got lost in each other, and for the first time since Ryan, I felt no fear, just desire and trust, and the absolute certainty that this dangerous man would never hurt me. We made love that night slowly, thoroughly, Dante worshipping every inch of my skin like I was a revelation. When I finally fell asleep in his arms, safe and sated and utterly claimed, I felt whole in a way I'd never experienced before. The next morning, I woke to find him already dressed, standing by the window with his phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian. The soft man from last night was gone, replaced by the sharp-edged businessman. When he noticed I was awake, he ended the call and came to sit on the edge of the bed. I'm sorry. Something's come up. We need to head back to the city. Disappointment flickered through me, but I nodded. Okay. His hand cupped my cheek. This weekend, it meant everything to me. I need you to know that. It meant everything to me, too. The drive back was quiet, Dante's hand holding mine the entire time, his thumb tracing absent patterns on my skin. When we reached the city, instead of taking me home, we went to Stella Notte. The restaurant was closed, but inside, I could see people moving around, Dante's people. All men in dark suits, all wearing expressions of grim determination. Stay in the car with Luca, Dante said, already opening his door. What's happening? Just business. I'll only be a few minutes, but I saw the tension in his shoulders. The way his hand moved to his waistband, where I now realized he carried a gun. This wasn't just business. This was dangerous. Dante. He kissed me hard and fast. Trust me. I'll be right back. Then he was gone, disappearing into the restaurant with Marcus at his side. The minutes stretched endlessly. Luca sat rigid in the driver's seat, his attention fixed on the restaurant entrance. My heart hammered against my ribs as worst-case scenarios played through my mind. Then I saw him. Through the restaurant window. Ryan. He was inside Stella Notte, surrounded by Dante's men, his face pale and terrified. Dante stood in front of him, speaking words I couldn't hear, but Ryan was shaking his head frantically, backing away. Horror and understanding crashed over me simultaneously. Dante had said Ryan wouldn't be a problem, had said he'd handled it, but Ryan must have kept trying, kept searching for me, kept pushing boundaries until Dante decided to handle it permanently. Let me out, I said to Luca. Mr. Salvatore said, let me out now, or I'll make a scene that attracts attention neither of us wants. Luca hesitated, then unlocked the doors. I burst into the restaurant, my sudden entrance making every head turn. Dante's expression shifted from cold fury to shock. Mia, what are you? Don't hurt him. The words tumbled out. Please, Dante, don't hurt him because of me. Ryan's eyes found mine, wide with fear, and something that might have been hope. Mia, thank God. Tell them I just wanted to talk to you. That's all. I wasn't going to hurt you, I swear. You broke into her former apartment, Dante said, his voice deadly calm. You threatened her old roommate. You've been calling the restaurant from different numbers. You hired someone to follow her." His eyes never left Ryan's face. "You think that's just wanting to talk?" My blood ran cold. "He did what?" "All of it," Dante confirmed. "Despite being warned. Despite being given every chance to walk away and forget you existed." Ryan's face crumpled. "I love you, Mia. I just love you so much. That's not love," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "Love doesn't stalk. Love doesn't threaten. Love doesn't terrify." I looked at Dante, whose jaw was tight with barely controlled rage. "But killing him won't change anything. It won't undo what he did or make me safer. It will send a message," Dante said quietly. "To who? Other obsessed ex-boyfriends?" I stepped closer to him, close enough to lower my voice. "I don't need you to kill for me. I just need you to make him disappear from my life. Permanently. Can you do that?" Something shifted in Dante's expression. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. He turned back to Ryan. "You have two choices. Option 1. You leave this city tonight. You go somewhere far away, start over, and you never speak my name or hers again. You don't call, don't write, don't even think about her. You pretend she died." Ryan nodded frantically. Yes, I'll go. I'm not finished. If you choose this option, you'll be monitored. Closely. And if you ever, even once, try to contact her or come back to this city, there won't be a second warning. There will only be consequences you won't survive. Understood?" "Understood." "Option 2, Dante continued, his voice dropping to something arctic. "I handle this my way. Right now. And they never find your body. Option 1. Ryan's voice broke. "Please." "I'll take option 1. Dante nodded to Marcus, who grabbed Ryan's arm. "You have 4 hours to be out of the city. Luca will escort you to collect your things. If you're still here when the sun comes up, the deal is off." They dragged Ryan toward the back exit. As he passed me, he tried to speak, but Marcus silenced him with a look. Then he was gone, and it was just Dante and me in the empty restaurant. "You shouldn't have come in here," Dante said. But there was no real anger in his voice. "You shouldn't have tried to handle this without telling me. I was protecting you. I know." I closed the distance between us, taking his hands in mine. "And I love you for it. But I need to be part of these decisions, Dante. If we're doing this, if I'm really yours, then you can't just make choices for me." His hands tightened on mine. "You love me." I hadn't meant to say it, hadn't even fully acknowledged it to myself. But now that the words were out, I couldn't take them back. Didn't want to. "Yes, I love you. Your darkness and your light. Your protection and your possessiveness. All of it." He pulled me against him, burying his face in my hair. "I love you, Mia. So much it terrifies me. You've become my entire world." We stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the restaurant where this had all begun. Where I'd hidden behind a counter and found something I never expected. A future. A choice. A love that was dangerous and consuming and absolutely real. "Take me home," I whispered against his chest. "Which home? Yours or mine?" I pulled back to look at him. "Is there a difference anymore?" His smile was brilliant, transforming his entire face. "No, cara mia, there isn't." As we walked out of Stella Notte together, his arm around my waist and my head on his shoulder, I knew my life would never be simple or safe in the conventional sense. Loving Dante Salvatore meant living in shadows and secrets, meant accepting protection that came with possession, meant choosing danger over safety, but it also meant being seen, being valued, being loved with an intensity that most people never experienced. Ryan disappeared that night, and I never heard from him again. Marco told me months later that he'd moved to Arizona, got a job in construction, started dating someone new. The information came through Dante's network, the same network that would alert us if he ever tried to come back. But he never did. Dante and I moved into his penthouse a month later, the apartment he'd given me becoming a guest space for my sister when she visited. I still worked at Stella Notte. Dante insisted I didn't have to. But I liked the normalcy of it, the routine, the way it kept me grounded in reality even as my life transformed into something extraordinary. We married in a small ceremony 6 months later, just immediate family and Dante's closest associates. My sister cried. Sophia from the kitchen made the cake. Marcus and Luca stood as witnesses, and when Dante slipped the ring on my finger, his eyes held a promise that needed no words. You're mine. I'm yours. Forever. The life I'd built with him wasn't the fairy tale I'd imagined as a girl. It was darker, more complex, filled with secrets and dangers I was still learning to navigate. But it was mine. We were building it together, one choice at a time. And every night, when I fell asleep in Dante's arms in our home overlooking the city, I felt something I'd thought was lost forever. Safe. Loved. Free. Not despite the danger, but because of the man who'd turned his world upside down to protect me from it. My dangerous savior, my obsessive protector, my love. The man I'd found while hiding behind a counter, not knowing he owned the place, not knowing he would own my heart.